Greetings, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland, and here I am in Craiglockhart, Edinburgh. So Craiglockhart is best known for having been a psychiatric hospital for British Army officers during the First World War, and this is where the war poets spent some time. So this building dates from 1880, and I'm just going to show you this little room with the war poets display. And it was originally founded for hydrotherapy. There's a then very fashionable notion that the use of water inside the body and outside the body the right way could cure various illnesses, now largely regarded as quackery. But anyway, in the First World War it was taken over by the British Army, and people had come back with shell shock, things we now recognise as post-traumatic stress disorder. People had been partially paralysed, having various turns, seizures, flashbacks and so forth. All sorts of diseases of the nerves, and the idea was to rehabilitate them here so they could go back to the war. So it's for officers only, and they had the finest psychiatric help, whereas other ranks were not quite so well looked after. The United Kingdom being a very class stratified society at the time. Some of the less well known war poets are here, such as Frank J. Pruitt, a Canadian who served in the British Army, not in the Canadian Army, in the First World War. Anyway, so Wilfred Owen was here, Siegfried Sassoon was here. This is where they met, and they became firm friends. So the medical staff was fantastic, and those who were treated here couldn't speak highly enough of them. You can read Pat Barker's book about it entitled Regeneration. Came out in the mid-90s. Here's a bust of the famous Wilfred Owen, and indeed you can see a film of the same name, which is called A Regeneration. Anyway, so Wilfred Owen is born in 1893 in England into an upper middle class family. He went to public school, I forget which one, and a university, and then he joined the army in the First World War. He certainly believed in the cause to begin with, but he rapidly grew disillusioned with it and began to feel it was an immoral cause. It was fought for greed and gain and all the rest of it. Didn't exactly become a pacifist. He spent a few months here, but when he was fit to go and serve again, he returned to the battlefront, where he was decorated for his valour. And then on the 11th of November 1918, the joy bells were ringing out in every church to signal victory for the Allies. And as the bells were ringing, a postman cycled up the drive to the parents of Wilfred Owen with a telegram to inform them that their son had been killed a week earlier. So Wilfred Owen's dear friend was Siegfried Sassoon. They only met here in this hospital. Sassoon came from a very affluent family. He'd been to public school, he'd been to Cambridge University, though I believe he left without a degree, and he'd been a bit of a dilettante, dabbling in poetry and a few other artistic endeavours, and he suddenly found purpose in the First World War. He was a partly Iraqi Jewish ancestry, so always felt like not fully accepted by British high society. He had much the same experience as Wilfred Owen. However, he survived the war, he got home, and he carried on writing until his death in the 1960s, though nothing was quite so searing or impactful as the verses he composed during the First World War. So both of them had felt the way that Rupert Brooke had at the beginning of the war. Rupert Brooke, who was killed, he died of an illness actually at Gallipoli, and Rupert Brooke, who had written when the war broke out, "Thank thee, O Lord, who hath matched us with this hour," saying how that they were keen of eye and straight of limb and so on, as though war was the ultimate sport, and he seemed to relish the opportunity of fighting, as though it was a splendid chance to demonstrate their gallantry and their sporting skill, almost as though war was the ultimate sport, and they were just being athletes. But really he found that soon that it was not morally uplifting in the least. It was not ennobling to see these teenagers shrieking in agony as they slowly died, or indeed to see rotten corpses left putrefying on the field of battle for weeks because it was too dangerous to go and collect them in no man's land. So that's Craiglockhart, somewhere which actually plays a very important part in British literature, and as you can see, whole library shelves are dedicated to their works and to scholarly studies of what these guys wrote. So they also wrote some prose books, memoirs of an infantry officer by Siegfried Sassoon, who became rather sardonic about the war. Rupert Graves, as part of their circle, became friends with Siegfried Sassoon, but they had a terrible falling out much later. And then this figure, Dr. Rivers, you'll see him in that film. I can't remember the name of the actor who plays him in that film. He's also a Bond villain later on, who bears more than a passing resemblance to this psychiatrist. The actor even grew a little moustache to be a bit like him. And the chap has some sort of medical condition. This doctor grows quite ill towards the end of the film, and indeed he died only 4 years after the end of the war. So this building was later taken over by the Catholic Church in 1920, became a Catholic teacher training college, and only closed in the 1980s. The teacher training college shifted to Kilgraston, a Catholic girls' school. I don't know if it still exists actually, it's deep in the countryside. And then latterly, Napier University bought this, and it's been part of that ever since. It was briefly called Craig Lockhart College, but Napier University's got several campuses across Edinburgh. This is one of them where you can do many subjects like fashion or events management or nursing and so forth. So we're just on the edge of Edinburgh, a little bit to the a bit to the east of the city. No, to the west of the city, yeah, towards Glasgow. See how dark and windy it is out there. Okay, I'll switch it off now.